Ben for saying everything I was going to say. A bit of a deja vu for me today. I couldn't quite place where this building was. I'm from Bristol. I was born here. I lived here for the first 15 years. So I kind of knew the name. I couldn't place it. So we get a taxi here. I get in the taxi and I walk into the car park. Suddenly I remember this deja vu was for real. I came here almost 50 years ago to a gig. All right? And one or two people may know the person if you're old enough. John Renbourn was playing here. Yeah, and he wasn't maybe so well known in those days. So yeah, really interesting that I end up here. I think it's 49 years later. I'm on the side he was on, right? And you're looking at me. So it's really nice to see so many people here I know. I know so many people here, it's unbelievable. Quite a lot of people here have actually worked for us at some point in the future, past. So yeah, really nice. Yeah, Woodchip.
I've lost your slide.
Oh dear.
Adam, why is it not?
Right, I'm going to keep talking. It's taken me a long time to suddenly realise what the association with trees and the way I farm was. Now, I'm also a woodworker. I've done a lot of woodwork, and so I actually use trees in other ways as well. I'm actually a pretty bad conservationist because I look at trees and what I can see is planks. Which is not ideal. So I've actually used a lot of trees in my lifetime. I've built a lot of things from a lot of wood. And it's only relatively recently I suddenly realised there was a direct connection between trees and what we did, because trees can offer enormous possibilities in terms of carbon and soil fertility. Are we there yet? I'll keep talking. So the connection between trees and horticulture has never really taken place before. They're two divorced mediums. People growing vegetables really don't want trees, or they haven't done until recently. And foresters really don't want to get involved in horticulture. So the two have been divorced, and I think it's time now we need to start bringing these two components together. In the same way we need to bring trees into agriculture, we need to bring trees into horticulture. But at the back of my mind, the big worry is, if we start planting trees, we're not going to have enough room for vegetables. So the challenge really is how do we do both? How do we integrate the trees into vegetable growing systems without losing space? And this is a question we've been asking ourselves at Harpic. Are we nearly there?
Yeah.
I'll keep rambling.
Okay. Do you want your next slide, yeah?
Right. Wonderful woodchip. Now, I had to ask Ben what I was doing today because I forgot. So I said, what am I doing? He said, well, anything and everything we know about woodchip. So that's the title of the presentation. Next one. Most of you probably know what we are and what we do. We've been going for a long time. We've been on the present site for over 30 years. We produce over 100 different crops, that's different types of vegetables, 100 odd tons of food a year. Food, it's important, we are food producers, we're farmers, we feed people, that's what we do. It's a self-sufficient system, it's stock-free, there's no livestock. Everything is mostly sold locally. We sell 80% of our produce within a 10-mile radius of the farm. We do seminars, workshops, food festivals, trials and research, and farm walks. Next one. Right, field cropping, we've got 7 hectares. In old money, that's about 17 acres. It's within an area of outstanding natural beauty, which means you don't actually grow vegetables, it's only grass and trees. That's all it's fit for. Our land is not good, it's poor quality, grade 3 C land. We're very lucky to have a range of natural features, which helps in terms of biodiversity. Next one. The wall garden, which is 1 hectare. This is the hub of what we do. Everything radiates from the wall garden, and everything actually radiates from one building in the wall garden. That's the propagation house, which is 130 years old, the old greenhouse. So the wall garden's the hub. This is where we grow the early out-of-season cropping, where we have tunnels, greenhouses, plant raising. Next one. Right, the problem we face as horticulturists, we make a huge demand on our soils, far more than any agricultural crop will. There's lots of tillage involved. Even if you're min-till, you're still doing a lot of it. There's the problems of importing fertility. Almost every horticultural unit in the UK is dependent on fertility from somewhere else, whether it's fertilisers in conventional terms or whether it's manure in organic terms. And that, if you're bringing in manure, you're importing acres. You're importing somebody else's land, ghost acres, which is okay if you're doing a hectare or two, but if you're doing 100 hectares, where's all that fertility coming from? Because it takes an enormous amount of land to produce it. So we're looking very much at a system which is more independent and more self-sufficient without relying on these ghost acres. Soil structure. Soil structure suffers badly in vegetable production, primarily because of a lot of tillage, weed control, traffic, even just pedestrian traffic can cause problems. Soil carbon. It's very difficult maintaining soil carbon when you're continually taking crops off. I mean, we have quite a high demand of cropping from our land, and that requires a lot going back. For whatever you take out has to go back, and replacing carbon is a minimum you have to do. So we're looking really at doing better than that, and actually restoring levels of carbon to a higher rate. And the problems of substrates. Roger mentioned about substrate potting compost earlier on. We still have a serious problem in UK organic horticulture, that so many people dependent on peat or peat-based products. It's going to be banned by conventional horticulture at some point. We should have banned it years ago. We're still using carbon-rich materials in substrate production. So the problem hasn't gone away. It's kind of moved a bit. We buy stuff from Germany, but we're still exploiting planetary resources in terms of carbon. Next one. So, possible solution. Composting waste materials, of course. Woodchip. Now, this woodchip thing suddenly became a reality for me. I kind of thought about it for a while and liked the idea, but nothing really happened until we had a party at Hardwick one day. We have quite a lot of parties at Hardwick. And I was leaning, as you do, on the doorpost, sort of just propping myself up, talking to one of my neighbours who's a tree surgeon. And he was telling me about the expense of getting rid of his wood chips. I said, hang on a minute, you've got to pay to get rid of this stuff? He said, yeah, we have to pay a landfill tax. I said, well, bring it to me. I'll use it. And not really thinking it's going to happen. Next morning, in my field gateway, was a huge big pile of wood chip. He turned up literally the following morning. So it started from there. Manual chip wood, I'll tell you more about in a minute, and green waste. So we do have possible solutions to these problems we face in horticulture. Next. Big pile of wood chip. This is actually a big pile of wood chip which has been composted. And I'll show you now how that comes about. Next one. So we're using around 400 cubic meters a year of wood chip. It's mostly coming from a local tree surgeon. We only have one person delivering to us. It's all from very close by, all kind of within 5 mile radius. We are now producing our own as well, but this was how we started. And it's piled up with a small digger, and it's turned 3, maybe 4 times in 1 year. Next one. And this is a cross section of a heap. When I first started doing this, which I think was 10 or 12 years ago, it might be more, I can't remember, everybody said, you must be mad. You cannot compost wood chip. Where the hell are you going to get nitrogen from? And it was a valid point. But I had seen piles of wood chip lying around that rotted on their own. So I knew that somehow it would work without this huge input of nitrogen. But still people say, well, no, it's not going to happen. You need to bring lots of urine in. You're going to be pissing on it all night. Where's it all going to come from? You're going to have to use animal manures. You're going to have to use slurry, poultry manure. I said, well, hang on, I don't have access to any of those materials, and I don't want to have access to those materials. I want to do it without all that. So let's give it a try, shall we? So in the first year, we just piled the stuff up, and to be honest, it didn't really work that well. The heap wasn't big enough. It didn't get very damp, it kind of dried out and kind of looked a bit horrible, it went mouldy, so I tried to irrigate it, and you can't irrigate wood chip, it just runs out. It's worse than trying to irrigate straw. So I kind of left it, and then suddenly I realised it was starting to happen. It was starting to compost, so I turned it a few more times, and sure enough it did. Then the heap got bigger. So now we have a heap which is 4 metres across, 2 metres high, and as long as you like. We have heaps longer than this room. And it works by the process of fungal degradation. There is no nitrogen in this stuff. The CN ratio of the feedstock is probably 300 or 400 to 1 or worse. It's very devoid of nitrogen. But it does contain fungi and bacteria. And the site is now infected because we're doing this on soil. So a lot of the fungi and bacteria are in the soil already there, and the process works a lot quicker. You can do it on concrete. I think it probably works almost as well, but somehow it just feels kind of nicer to do it on soil. There's no problem with leachate. Nothing runs out. You don't have these horrible black, greasy pools of water hanging around in the area. All the moisture is absorbed. We don't cover it. There's no need to cover it until it's completely finished. We do cover some areas for substrate use, but other than that we don't cover it. So it's a simple process. We just turn it 4 or 5 times a year. Next one. Here's a digger. I hire a digger. I used to own one. Every boy's delight. I mean, I couldn't believe my luck when I got a digger years ago. It was like what I'd always wanted. The thing is, it was very old, and I wore it out because I played too much on it. Once you've got a digger, the sky's the limit. Do anything, you know. You can garden with a digger. It's fantastic. So and I hire one in. It doesn't cost much. It's 300 quid. I mean, anybody hire a thing like that for 300 quid a week is unbelievable. But 300 quid a week. I use it for 15 hours a day for 7 days because I got other projects for it as well. But it's a really useful way of turning material. It's very quick. I can turn 200 cubic metres in a day with this machine. Really good for loading up. We have an old, very old muck spreader with rear discharge, and we use that for applying to the field. But some of it goes into the wall garden, into tunnels, which is all done by hand, of course, but the field application is quite simple. Next one. So the application, it's all very well making lovely material, but you can completely mess it up by applying it in the wrong way at the wrong time at the wrong point of rotation. So it's really important that you target this. We don't have too much of this material. You know, we would like to have more, but it's not practical, it's not feasible, and it's probably not desirable. So it's really about targeting and applying it in the right way at the right time. The amounts we use are quite modest, between 50 and 70 cubic metres. Which, if you can imagine this hallway is many thousands of cubic metres. So it's a very, very small amount. 10 cubic metres equals 10 millimetre, roughly. That gives you some idea. So if you hear of people putting on 6 inches of compost, they're putting on several thousand tonnes an acre. You have to be careful about over-applying. You're not going to over-apply this stuff because you'll never have enough. It's really important to apply at a point in the rotation when the crop is able to take up the nutrient. So if you were to do this on bare soil at this time of year, you may as well not bother. You might as well just dump it in the nearest river because you've wasted almost everything you've achieved. The thing about woodchip compost, it's not a fertiliser, it's not a plant food, it's a soil improver. It's carbon rich, it contains some nutrient, but you're not going to have a party on the P and K levels. That's not what it's about. What it's really about is carbon, biological activity, fungi and bacteria. You're inoculating your soil with fungi and bacteria, which is probably devoid. Most soils are short of these agents. So application is really important. We do apply compost to bare soils in tunnels because we have an artificial environment. We can do it. We've got protection from rain. But outside we would only do it during the growing season, so between April and October. It only goes on to green manure crops. We never ever put compost onto bare soil, apart from if we're planting strawberries. That's the only time. So it always goes on to green manure because within that situation, within green manure, we have soil which is increasing fertility, it's in the resting phase, it's in the rejuvenation phase, it's got increasing populations of earthworms, fungi and bacteria. It's able to absorb this material in the right way. Putting it on the surface is important. Burying it, again, you may as well throw it away, don't bother. If you're going to plough it in, forget it. You may as well just go home, go to bed, because you're going to waste everything. Next one. Right, substrate compost. We kind of stuck in this world of calling it compost when really it's not. It's actually a substrate or a growing medium. We expect a lot of our substrates. We're hoping to find nutrients, moisture holding, light, no weeds, renewable, cheap, available. Peat ticks most of those boxes, which is why it's always been so popular. But woodchip can also do the same thing. So we started looking some years ago at how we could improve our production of substrate. We've always made our own substrate for many, many years. We used to make it out of molehills and add a bit of compost or something, and a bit of fish blood and bone when we were into those horrible sort of things. So we've always done it, but we've always been slightly wary of recommending other people do it because it doesn't always work out quite the same every year. So we thought we need to do some trials and see really where we're at in terms of this. Next one. The previous picture is our old greenhouse. Can you go back? This is 130 years old, this greenhouse, and it's still in active service. We raise around 100,000 plants a year there using our own material. Next. Next one. Leave that one out, it's boring. Right, so we kind of found somewhere, I say we, I'm not sure who did, but somebody found us some money to do some trials. Looking at our substrate, comparing it with Classman, which is sort of the industry standard really, to see if it really was as good as I've been claiming, because what I say is maybe not always very truthful, or maybe a little bit exaggerated. I am prone to exaggeration, so I started to think I must be exaggerating about how good this material is, because surely it can't be that good. So we did a trial, and the trial was four different substrates, I'll explain in a minute, and 2 crops. We did cabbage and leeks, and the idea was to take it right through from sowing right the way through to harvest and final assessment of the crop, looking at a range of parameters within that. Next one. Have I used up 10 minutes yet? I've got 5 to go. I've got 15 to go. Crikey. Right, okay. As part of the trial, it was quite comprehensive, and we were involved with the Organic Research Centre, which we have been for decades, and it's great. It's really nice having this involvement with a research company, because they do all your soil analysis for you. You don't pay for it. Which is why I've probably got one of the most comprehensive records of soil analysis of any farm anywhere in the country. I've got 34 years worth, I think, none of which I've ever paid for. Thank you to Lawrence for that, by the way. And they're still doing it. But the money's now EU money, or it was. So there's 4 composts here. The light green one is our substrate. I keep using this word compost, substrate. It's no different from the compost in the field, it's just sieved out and a little bit of perlite added. The light green one is ours, the dark green one is ours with biochar, because biochar is, everyone thinks biochar is like really cool, and you have to, hey man, are you using biochar? You're not using biochar? Ah. So we thought we'd bring biochar in, because this is what people want to know. Okay, I wanted to know, because I've always been a little bit cynical, so I wanted to see if I was being truthfully cynical or just making it up. So, and then the light brown one is Classman. This is Classman reduced peat. You can get Classman regular peat and Classman reduced peat. I mean, a lot of growers use Classman. It's good, it works. It produces a product, of course. And then the dark brown one was Classman with biochar. And you can see the difference between the nitrogen. I'm not a scientist, so I don't really understand this, but the colours speak for themselves. In that our substrate was completely different from theirs in terms of nitrogen. I mean, a huge difference. And looking like there was probably far too much. And that actually has been the case. So everyone said, all these people that said, hey, you can't compost wood chip. What about nitrogen? Look at this. We haven't added anything. Nothing's been put in this. This is wood chip. This is wood. This is what you get from wood. Next one. Don't you hate it when people put slides out with lots of figures and graphs and stuff? Well, I nicked these from our farm because they are quite useful. And then looking at other nutrients within the material, again, huge differences. Look at the potassium. We got huge. We could sell this stuff off as a potassium fertilizer. There's a lot of material with potassium. Other things, kind of the same, but the potassium picture is clearly quite different. Next one. As part of the trial, we were hoping to get some more money, but it didn't work out, to actually look at